Lights is now streaming live.
Yes, go.
Good afternoon. You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Click the live stream tab or watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube at WCEG Network. I'm Celeste Giordano, your show host, along with my co-host Sarah Poe, and we're the global legacy and wealth building for the next hour. We're the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, our disclaimer, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guest and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support, and thank you, Penny Rogers, the board, and everyone at WCEG Network for the opportunity for us to serve the listeners and community. Hey, Sarah, how are you today?
I am great. It's a nice day out, and it's not 18 degrees.
Well, I'm up in Kentucky, and I believe it's about 15 degrees up here, so I wish I was in Atlanta. But I'm excited, Sarah, for our show tonight. We have Street Grace with us. This is the second time we've had Street Grace on our show, and we have Camila Zolfaghari. Did I say that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Hey. And we have Faythe Kadona. Then we welcome both of you, and we are so excited to have both of you on the show tonight. And we're going to learn about the Human Trafficking Awareness Month in January, the Hope Court, and the Youth Mentoring Program. And we also have some events coming up in February for Lobby Day. So we have a great show lined up for you. But before we do, I would love for Sarah. We're getting to that time. I think tax season just opened up this week, and I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about Sarah Poe and Poe's Accounting Services.
Hey, everybody. I am Sarah Poe with Poe's Accounting Services. And yes, tax season opened up yesterday. So the fun has begun. Just remember that the people at the IRS are still really behind. We need to be patient with people because they are behind. They've got their plates full just like everybody else. So we need to remember that when we are trying to get things out of them. We just need to be kind. And sometimes that's not always the easiest thing to do. So just be kind to everybody.
Absolutely.
Tell us about you.
Yes, I'm Celeste Giordano with CelesteGiordano.com. I'm a master sales strategist and a business mentor, and I help business entrepreneurs, direct sales teams, and corporations exponentially increase sales and profit through lead generation, building relationships, and accountability. And Sarah, it's a great honor to be here with you today, and I am so excited to get started with our guest because we got a jam-packed hour here. And I know our audience is going to want to learn a lot of things about Street Grace and all the positive things that they have going on. And with that, I would like to introduce Camila. Did I say that right? Camila. I'm sorry. I get that. Like Brigitte we had on here earlier this month. And I said Brigitte, and I never could remember how to say her name. And this is horrible to say this, but the way I remembered it was Margarita and the Brigitte, so the Margarita at the end would remind me how to say Brigitte at the end. So, and Camila, and I think a Camelot. So I have to think of those two together. But we've had you on the show before, and you've been associated with Street Grace for a long time. And first, what I like to do is say a little bit about Street Grace. Street Grace is a faith-based organization that utilizes evidence-based demand reduction strategies to eradicate the commercial sexual exploitation of children through prevention, protection, policy, and pursuit. The abbreviation of CSEC is any sexual activity involving a minor for which something of value is given or promised. And Sarah, you and I have been associated with Street Grace, I believe since 2017. Is when we became involved with Bob Rogers. Is that maybe when he came around was, I think, 2017?
Yep, that's about when he got started with us.
We have had Bob as a guest speaker at numerous networking events that Sarah and I have been associated with. And then we've had Camila. And I would like to read about Camila because she's got a stellar bio. And this is a lady that you really, really want to get to know, not only with Street Grace, but as an individual. Camila serves as the executive director of Street Grace, Georgia, bringing 10 years expertise and experience prosecuting human trafficking cases and spearheading legislative changes. During her time at Street Grace, she has overseen the passages of some of the most historic legislative victories in the history of human trafficking movement. She was invited by the First Lady, Marty Kemp, to serve on the Grace Commission, a group of leaders dedicated to ending human trafficking. She is a highly sought after speaker and is often invited to speak at statewide and national conferences and shares her expertise along with the innovative policy and demand centered work of Street Grace. In 2014, Camila was appointed by former Attorney General Sam Owens to the first special prosecutor dedicated to the prosecution of human trafficking in the state of Georgia. As a prosecutor for the Attorney General's office, she has had the authority to prosecute human trafficking throughout the entire state and assisted jurisdictions as they work these complex cases. In addition to handling prosecutors, Camila oversaw the Attorney General's policy agenda on human trafficking. She was involved in the National Association of Attorney General's Human Trafficking Committee, chaired the statewide law enforcement work group, and has completed her certification in digital evidence for prosecutors for the National Computer Forensic Institute run by the U.S. Secret Service. And I'm going to stop right there. And Camila, without further ado, we are so honored and privileged to have you here today and to learn about all the amazing things not only you and Street Grace and Faythe are doing. And we just welcome you today. So thank you for your time to be here.
No, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Celeste and Sarah, I'm just so grateful for all that you are doing. I don't know if you know this, but when I very first came on with Street Grace, very first thing Bob did was to send me to speak at one of your events, just as I was coming out of prosecution. So it's always a good and special time to be here. And I'm really grateful to be joined by Faythe Kadona, my partner in all of this. She is our office manager, but also chairs our survivor advisory board. She was also extremely instrumental in the passage of the vacatur and record restriction law, in addition to advising us and on all of the law based on from her expertise and all the policy changes that we're working on. She really was the one, a part of the group of survivors, but leader of the group of survivors who sat down with the governor, sat down with the first lady and said, this is so important. And Georgia, with our vacatur law, really was able to go from having nothing specifically for trafficking survivors, to really having one of the strongest laws in the nation. We've been so grateful to the legislature and the governor for making this a priority. But Faythe was the one who was in those meetings talking about why this is so important, why this is needed. And then in the past year, she's helped us launch the youth mentorship program through the Hope Court. So this is a diversion court, juvenile court focused on serving and meeting the needs of those who have been trafficked or those who are at high risk for being trafficked. And she sits on that court, helps to advise all the work that's been done, and also coordinating and working with all of the mentors for those youth. I'll let her tell you more about all of it, but it really is great to be on here with you, and really glad Faythe could join us today too.
Absolutely, Faythe, and we thank you so much for your time. Now, before we jump into some questions, and I'm sure we'll start with Faythe first, what I would love, Camila, is if you would give us a an update on Street Grace since the last time you were here. We've been in COVID for the last 2 years, and I know we haven't had some of the events that we normally have in certain months. And I know right when COVID hit, I think you opened up an office in Houston, Texas. And I think you have one in Chattanooga, Tennessee now. So, not to steal your thunder, but why don't you just tell our audience and our listeners what's been going on with Street Grace in the last 2 years and bring everybody up to date before we dive into these questions.
Absolutely. Thank you. So it really has been amazing, the pivots and changes that we have seen in the last 2 years. Really just, thanks to our partners, thanks to our friends, thanks to those who are in the fight with us. We have opened offices now in Houston and Chattanooga. We also have hired some national people. We've actually quadrupled our staff since COVID started. We have a policy director now, a national policy director, a national director of research who makes sure everything we do is evidence-based, then make sure every number we say is backed by peer-reviewed research, really just wanting to strengthen all of the work we're doing. But there's been several other programs as we're very excited to get ready to have Advocacy Day at the Capitol again. We've always called it Lobby Day. Advocacy Day will be this year at the Capitol. Just actually, I believe, announced it this weekend, but it's going to be February 16th. So we really hope a lot of people will be able to join us. We're excited about some of the policies that we're advocating for this year. Faythe will tell you more about the Hope Corps. We also have a youth mentorship, and the youth mentorship program. We also have a leadership academy. So kind of an in-depth program that we do with kids in schools, training them to be leaders and then leaders on the issue of CSEC. Then we have the broader Help Locker program. So using TikTok, and I could talk about all these, but it really has been a year, I think, because one of our focuses has always been on redeeming technology as the biggest change I've seen in the last decade with trafficking. Traffickers used to look for the runaway kid on the street. Now they look for kids who are online. And since that prevention part was always there when everything switched and we all went online, we were able to use some of those resources we've actually been building over the last few years to continue to work with kids, to continue to work on preventing and protecting children, and even pursuing traffickers with use of artificial intelligence bots. So it's really, it's been kind of exciting to see all that's happening. And of course, to be able to have, just a greater team of experts around, because the vulnerable really deserve our best. We want to make sure we are doing our best to protect them.
The last 2 years, there's been a lot of changes. A lot.
It really has, from the offices and the staff, but really primarily the output, the research, our ability to reach people. Used to be when everything was online. Everything was in person. We could reach the people in the room. But some of our trainings, whether it's the Keeping Kids Safe Online and the digital age training, or just Trafficking 101 or Trafficking 201, 301, can reach a much broader audience virtually from this chair. So it's been nice to be able to just have that pivot. I think those who work with our youth are seeing the same thing. They're able to reach the youth and meet with them more often virtually than they ever were driving all around the state in person. And kids like talking this way. It's what they're used to. It's their comfort zone.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is second nature to them, right? So that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And every youth is unique, but many youth have given us the feedback, and social workers are giving us the feedback that the kids are telling them they're more comfortable this way.
Right.
And there's a whole deal of work and therapy that has to be done around getting people used to being in person, but we've also really been able to, take a bad situation and use it for good.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, very good. Well, I appreciate you bringing us up to date. So, Sara, let's get started with Faythe. And do you have a couple of questions for Faythe, if you would, please?
Sure. So, Faythe, what is the Hope Corps and how does the youth mentoring program work?
First, I want to say thank you for having me on. It's a very humbling experience and I really appreciate it. And so the Hope Court program was actually birthed, I believe, in DC. And what it is, healing opportunities through positive empowerment. So it is a similar diversion program that you would find in the juvenile justice system. And what it is kids have criminal charges, but the program seeks to take those kids who are high risk for trafficking or who have been confirmed trafficking victims and seek to put them through a year-long program that has a team of 15 people, one being me as a mentor program coordinator, and really gives them the opportunity to go through counseling services, social services, such as like things in the community, whether it's music, whether it's youth mentoring services like our program, whether it is extra tutoring for school where they get like, it's called credit recovery services. So if a child is failing in school, they get extra tutoring services through the school and extra tutoring services through an education program where they can actually get those credit recovery and be able to pass their grade instead of failing or just being like, we're just going to go ahead and pass you, but you're not actually learning the curriculum and what you need to be able to understand for the next grade that you're going into. And then there's other things where the education advocate on the team actually works with the school. So the school is notified that this is a high risk youth. They're in a Hope Court program. And so the school is notified, okay, we need to have like extra kid gloves with this child. So if they act up in class or they get into a fight or they see high risk behavior, instead of just dismissing the child and saying, you're just a troubled kid, we know that there are other factors going on in the school. And so the school notifies the probation officer, who is actually considered a case manager, not a probation officer of the court. And they all come together collaboratively on this massive team for this youth and work together to say, okay, this isn't working, let's try this. Or instead of probation sanctions, we're going to do things like equine therapy, or we're going to do things like community services instead of sanctions, to try to make it to where this child has a better chance of less recidivism. Maybe they don't go to jail in the long term, to keep them out of RYDC or JRYDC. And so they don't end up growing to be one of the adults who end up in our justice system that just keeps, using it as a revolving door. And so that's Hope Court in and of itself. And then the mentor program is a supplementation to that. So we seek to provide the youth with a survivor, and there's a matching process that happens as close as possible. I match them with a mentor who has the same interests or might have similar experiences without going into either one of their stories. And so, for instance, I have 2 youth in the court and I'm matched to those 2 youth, and we have very similar experiences, very similar interests. And so what I do is for each one individually, I provide services once a week to where we do virtual on Google Duo, and one is on Zoom. And I talk with them. I'm like a friend to them. One of them, we do a vision board book, and the other one, I'm just there whenever she needs me because she's having a hard time right now. And so, each one you walk life differently with them, but that's what we're there to do. I'm going to walk the journey with you for as long as you need me to. We're contracted to do it for a year, but if it's a lifelong thing, it's a lifelong thing. If it's less than a year, it's less than a year. But there's no time limit to mentoring, really, because we understand as survivors that had we had someone to walk this journey with us when we were going through our hard times, then our outcomes might have been a little bit different. And so we just seek to aim to provide the best services that we can for some of these kids.
So how does Street Grace, how are you notified with this? Is this Hope Court your program, or is it a statewide program, or maybe
So Hope Court is actually a supplementation to Chatham County's juvenile court system. So it's actually a court program that they have implemented, just like DC has one in their system. Chatham County has it in Chatham County, Georgia's juvenile court system has it in theirs. Street Grace created a mentor program to supplement their Hope Court. So we're collaborating together.
So you're primarily working with the Chatham County, I think that's Chatsworth, is that right? Chatsworth, Georgia?
Savannah.
Savannah.
Savannah. Okay,
Yes,
excuse
ma'am.
me. Savannah. Okay, Savannah. I'm sorry. So do you get you have opportunities for local people to be educated and to go through a program to become mentors with Street Grace and the Hope Court?
Yes, ma'am. So I would do a mentor training with them. They would undergo training to be a mandated reporter for the state of Georgia. And then there would be, additional trainings and supplementations that they would have to go through to, be trauma informed. There's an interview process, and it's double interview process with Camila and I, and background checks, things like that. There's all kinds of things that we would do because we want to make sure, because this is our most vulnerable population, that the mentors that come alongside these youth are ones that are leaders in the community, can walk alongside these youth and can really pour into their lives something that they've never had before.
Well, this is very exciting because this is our nonprofit show. Sarah and I do two shows. The second Tuesday of the month is our for-profit, and our fourth Tuesday of the month is our nonprofit show. And Sarah and I are co-founders of the Women of Community Impact. And of course, we have been wanting to implement our youth mentorship program. And so we are very interested in learning more about how our community, our network at Women of Community Impact, can help and be a part and collaborate in camaraderie with Street Grace.
We really appreciate that. Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead.
So the second part of that, what is the importance of survivors being involved in the mentoring process?
So there's a couple of things to that. As a survivor myself, I have two mentors. And I meet both of them at different times. So one I meet with every week, and she's been pouring into my life for a couple of years, and I have been able, she's older than me. And so one thing I have found, and this will answer first part of that question, is one thing I have found as a survivor is that I needed a non-survivor to pour into my life so that I could learn how to overcome the effects of my trauma from someone who is older than me, who has lived through different experiences, but that could help me see life through a different lens. And so with that, she's been able to walk me through a process of, not everybody looks like a buyer. Not everybody looks like a trafficker. Not everybody looks like a dollar sign. Not everybody's going to hurt me. And so for the last several years, she has walked me through this in a godly way, in a loving way, in a kind way, of really just allowing me to pour out myself to her and knowing that there's safety in that, and I can be held in that, and I can be secure in that. And then the second piece to that is that when we have experienced horrific trauma such as trafficking, we need someone who does understand that. So then we do need someone who has walked that path, so that we know when we say, hey, today I have had all these memories of my trafficking, all these memories of my buyers who have purchased me, and this will not stop replaying in my head. How do I make it stop? There is someone who could speak into that and say, okay, this is how I've done it. This is how I've gotten through it 24 hours a day. And it's just every 24 hours, or maybe every hour. And sometimes you need that mentor to speak into that part of it, to say, it's going to be okay. I understand how you feel. Let's just talk about this. Or let me give you some good, healthy coping mechanisms to be able to process through this when you can't get to your therapist, or you can't get to your counselor, or because you have a probation officer and sometimes law enforcement was involved in your trafficking, you don't want to talk to your probation officer. So sometimes that can be difficult too. And so having a survivor to walk that path with you is also a very important piece to that as well.
Yeah, because I would think there's a trust factor right there that is lost during this process, or when you were trafficked or the survivor was trafficked. I can't even begin to imagine.
So in other words, Faythe, also, not the age group is not really minors. It can be people under the age of 18 as well as people over the age of 18, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
On the Hope Corp. So what is the Survivor Advisory Board, and how important is the survivor's voice?
this is also one of my favorites. So, the Survivor
Sing it,
Advisory-
sing it, sing it.
You're just hitting my sweet spots today. The Survivor Advisory Board is a group of survivors who collaboratively have come together for the last 4 years and given a voice to the voiceless. And so, honestly speaking, and Camila kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. So we have advised on legislation in Georgia where there really was none, especially with the vacatur and expungement law. There was no legislation on it. We have collaboratively come together and been a support group when we didn't have one. So we have created a support group for survivors, and there's really not one right now. And so what we do is, one, we support one another.
Absolutely.
And that is if one's having a bad day, one's struggling with their kids, one's struggling with triggers because they can't get to the counselor, while we're not therapists or anything like that, we do understand the walk, and we're adults. So all of us on the board are adults. But we work collaboratively together too, also to advise Street Grace on, hey, what's the best legislation for survivors? Because we know better than anybody. We know that we need sustainable housing. We need better jobs. We need better employment. When you have a survivor who has 15 prostitution charges because she was being trafficked, but her pimp would hide around the corner, and then she would be the one that would get arrested for the trafficking, and he was nowhere to be found. She can't get a job and she can't get an apartment because they look at her prostitution charges. So we
Right.
speak into things like that because we know it's really not just about us. It is about the kids that are coming up behind us that are being trafficked too. And so we give a voice to that, because if we don't speak up, honestly, we understand that there's not a lot of people that have been speaking up behind us, because when we were coming up, it was quiet. And so while that is really to nobody's fault, that's an education thing. We're speaking up into the education pieces. We're speaking up into the atmospheres where it's like, hey, we're here. And we know that our voice needs to be heard in different arenas, whether it's, radio, whether it's churches, whether it's, TV, whether it's businesses and organizations and different functions, because our experience matters. We didn't go through it and survive it for no reason, but we want to educate also people as a board to say our experience can help you in your organization to stop traffic. It can help you to help these kids that are coming up behind us, because what's happening to them can be stopped and we can help you. And so that's what we're there for. And that's really why our voice matters, because our experience is what is going to help shape education and help shape these kids' lives so that they don't continue experiencing trafficking.
There's so much y'all are doing and teaching and helping and just support. We just thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you. You make it possible.
Mm-hmm.
And Faith, our heart loves your heart. I mean, I can tell how passionate you are about what you do and helping and serving other people. And that's what it's all about. It's about serving and helping other people. It's not about you, it's about them. And you can tell that that's exactly what you do. And I just want you to know how proud we are of you and everything that you have contributed, collaborated, and camaraderie to bring and be a part of this program of Hope Court and the Survivor Advisory Board. And Camila, I would love for you to summarize and add some comments to this, please.
Yeah, no, I think it's just Faythe recently was speaking in DC. So our big national human trafficking conference, about some of the changes in laws, but also how important it is not to get an idea. And then sometimes we've had groups that do this. They have an idea or they want to do a program, and then they basically want to push their own agenda by using a survivor's story, rather than recognizing that the survivors are the real experts here. Let's figure out what needs to be done by listening to them, not by using them to push our own agenda.
Yeah.
And that's why God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we want to talk like that. And when we listen, you feel the passion and the power, and they will tell you, like you said, what we need to do to help and serve them by being a good listener.
Mm-hmm.
With
I
that.
like that.
So-
I like that.
so-
Thank you.
Is there a look? Okay, I think there's a lot more awareness about human trafficking,
Yeah.
but am I just more in tune to it, or is there really more information and more awareness out there these days?
I think we really are moving the needle, but that doesn't mean everybody understands it. There's still, I just the other day heard somebody announcing a human trafficking event talking about foreign-born being moved through Atlanta. And this is a very generally enlightened, educated, involved, woke person. And my jaw dropped, I'm like, because that is such the exception to the rule. We're not talking about people coming through our airports. That it's not that never happens. But primarily the reason so many cases were found around the airport is because it was some of our cheaper hotels, and the law enforcement agencies around the airport were being trained and being very proactive, not because anybody was actually flying in. The great majority of our trafficking survivors are local, are domestic. It's why another name for CSEC, we say DMST, domestic minor sex trafficking. What is then that's what we see here. So yes, in a way, there's been a lot of education. There's been so much progress legislatively through services. And then all of a sudden you'll feel great. And then all of a sudden you'll hear somebody who says, like with the Super Bowl, I had friends saying, hey, don't worry. I went downtown, but I held my daughter's hand real close because I know there's trafficking going on. Like, nobody was being kidnapped. What was happening is they were taking vulnerable kids and talking to them through social media and getting them to run away. And yes, exploiting their vulnerabilities to sell them over and over again. They weren't kidnapping. So yes, we've moved the needle, but yes, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember, Camila, when you and Bob were on the show last year or the year before, that a majority of those predators are outside of 285 in the metropolitan Atlanta area, and they're from the high-end homes. I mean, you people that you would never imagine or think, that live in a nice neighborhood or whatever, that they are the predators out there.
Absolutely. It's another thing we have to understand. Those who are buying our children are traffickers exactly the same, and under the law exactly the same as those who are selling. And in order to purchase, you have to have a certain amount of expendable income in order to purchase sex. Our buyer, we think of it as an urban problem, but that's not. It's everywhere. And when I was prosecuting, before I was at the AG's office, I led the human trafficking unit for Fulton County. So Fulton County is urban. Even at that point, half of our survivors were from rural Georgia. Dallas, Georgia, Oconee County, Middle Georgia. Because many traffickers, it's their way of exploiting. If I can get somebody from outside, from far away, I'll bring them here. But that doesn't mean, I was in Fulton County, that didn't mean the buyers were urban. They come from all over, but very often they look like your neighbors. When you see an operation going after the buyers, pull up the pictures, they look like whatever demographic the operation was based in, all over the country.
Yeah.
Well, and I would think, and I don't know the statistics, and you may with this question, with this pandemic and the kids being at home remotely and this or that, I would imagine those numbers have increased astronomically.
Yes, I believe FBI just recently released a report on, more than doubling of the cyber tips. There were 17,000 cyber tips just sent into NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They run a cyber tips line, 17,000 in 2020. We're waiting for the 2021 numbers, but I mean, so traffickers had already moved online, casting this wide net. Send a message to 100 girls on social media. Somebody's going to be facing a crisis.
Right.
Somebody's mom just lost their job. Somebody's trying to get their power turned back on. Somebody just got in a fight with their parents and won out of the house, fight with their sibling, fight with their boyfriend. Their best friend just betrayed them. Somebody's vulnerable to manipulation right now. And so that was already going on. And then you added to the pandemic, people being afraid of losing their job, people being very isolated, people being lonely, people no longer showing up at school where teachers could see changes in behavior. And it just really, it increased the vulnerabilities, so much that we do see a lot more exploitation.
Absolutely. And I remember back when the economy dipped in 2006 and 2009, and I had a franchise and I did interviews and hired people. And, the one thing that just dumbfounded me the most were seeing these young adults coming in, and they were 18. They had to be 18, but between 18 and 25, where those children, they're children to me, but those young adults lived at home, and a majority of them lived with a single parent, whether it be a mom or a dad, divorced, it was a divorced family. Maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend lived with that parent or whatever, and how they were expected to bring money in to pay, like you said, light bills and phone bills and food bills. And it's like, it just got under my nerves to think that this 18-year-old needed this job so bad because he had to pay the household bills.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing we've seen in talking to other people who are working in this field. There's the vulnerability of, prior childhood sexual abuse, prior trauma. There are those, but another very vulnerable population that we've seen is that ultra responsible, that oldest child, that one who. I remember a girl really well in a case that we did, and it was, she was supposed to be there taking care of her grandfather and her grandmother and her mother, who was diabetic and going blind. And then she finds she's a straight A student, never been in trouble. But she finds out she might be pregnant. She's crying as she's walking home from school, and somebody says, "Hey, you can make money dancing. I got this friend, she will set you up. Don't worry." The lady, let me just introduce you to this lady. And then, so it was traffic. There are definitely reasons where certain people are more vulnerable than others, but we all have vulnerability. Such a broader range of our children are at risk, are vulnerable, because one of the biggest vulnerabilities is just access to technology. Yes. And very often and parents who are afraid to talk to their kids about technology. And about the other issues and things that are coming up on it.
Well, and I want to get to the questions right here, but another thing, like what you were saying, Camila, is these parents giving these young kids these phones and things of this nature at such a young age, and they're allowing them on TikTok and these, all these different social media things. I mean, at 12 years of age, why is a child doing all that? I mean, I understand the safety. Some people want the child to have a phone, but if you're going to give it to them, then be responsible enough to monitor it.
Absolutely. I was on with the district attorney in Houston, Texas. We were on a program very much like this the other day, and he takes his phone. I was like, "I have daughters." He's like, "If you are a parent, there is no privacy. You can take your child's phone. You can go through it. There are no laws. There is no privacy between a parent and a child under 18. And so I think that's really, really, really important to remember. And also to be educated and aware of what your kids are experiencing and facing, and talk about it openly. When we're talking about sex, there is no the talk. It has to be ongoing conversations about, do you know all your friends on your social media? Do you know them in real life? Are you allowed to add people you don't know? Setting rules, setting boundaries, and not being afraid of hard conversations. Because if you don't talk to your kids about sexting and the danger of sending inappropriate photos, somebody else is going to tell them, this is what girlfriends do for their boyfriends. You can't be in a relationship. There's no such thing as a relationship without you sending these pictures. Do you want anybody to care for you? Then send me these pictures. And someone's going to tell your kid that. You need to have told them something else.
Well, not only that,
to pornography.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, and what they think is so innocent, like you say, but again, as parents, you need to be parents. You need to set the boundaries. I'm a firm believer, because I have nieces and nephews, and I have friends that have children and things of this nature. Letting that kid take this phone and go to bed at night, that just gets under my skin like no tomorrow. How dare you just license that kid to go create its deathbed, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, way too often that is the case. And parents are afraid. It definitely, it helps if you set those boundaries with your kid at the very beginning. We're going to go through your phone once a week and we're going to look at everything. If there's ever anything I can't get into, then it's not your phone anymore. But you know what? If you didn't do that and your kid is 16, you can still set that. You can do the hard thing to protect your child.
Well, and you say 16. Think of these kids that are 10, 11, and 12 with these phones. But I just think we have a moral obligation to our listeners and our audience. This is my rant for the night, that we have to get that message out there. And any of my friends and family that are listening, hey, you're hearing it from the experts right here, not Aunt Celeste.
It's a great rant.
Yes,
They'll
great
find
rant.
pornography on it, and YouTube actually teaches them how to bypass parental control. So if you have that conversation and you're the one going in there, then you're the one who knows that up front, and you're creating that conversation with them that says, I hear you. Even if you're mad at me, I hear you, I see you, and we can talk about anything, because it's you opening up that channel. Because if not, then they will not come to you when something does happen, or someone is bothering them, or someone does find them when they're at school or online, and then they don't know that they can come to you and say, hey, I don't know what this guy wants from me, but he's asking me for pictures. If you're not having that open dialogue with them, they're not going to be comfortable to come to you and say, I don't know what to do with this. Instead, they're going to give into that because they don't feel comfortable talking to you. And so those conversations, they're hard, but they're really, really important.
Well, and Faythe, you just said something very powerful, but I also want to comment on something very powerful that Camila said, is parents, you need to take that phone once a week and go through their TikTok and look at that sexy dance that they're doing for the audience and stuff like that. I mean, a 12-year-old doing those things, no, what are you teaching them? And then, Faythe, what you were saying there, I lost my train of thought on that, and I apologize. But it's dadgummit, and that was so powerful what you just said. And it just have to come back to me, Faythe. I apologize.
You're okay.
Well, something that I learned today. I am 60 years old. I don't know everything about everything, and never will. I learned some things about sex today I didn't know were possible. And it just scared the crap out of me. I am 60 years old.
Yes, absolutely. But what is shocking is that the kids do know these things. So one of my favorite trainings to do is the Keeping Kids Safe online training, because it's with the perspective. People think we're going to teach them like they just want a magic app or a program. Like, that's not it. It is all about talking to kids and relationships and a little bit about technology, because we're writing it with this perspective that you are probably trying to protect a kid who definitely knows more about technology than you do.
You do. You're right.
And in some cases, because of that technology, they may know more about sex than you do.
I was just like, somebody told me something today, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to go wash my face, my eyes, my ears. I can't. I get blinded to that stuff that's out there.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
It was an eye opener today.
Yeah. And we
The
want
kids
to
aren't.
be wise, because kids are not. Faith's totally right.
They're not.
Kids are not. And I think, I'm even, when I was first started prosecuting and done a lot of trainings for law enforcement and adults, and the first time I'd been about a year or two, I had to go in and speak to some juveniles, some kids. And I'm thinking I've got to tone down what I'm saying, like whitewash, everything. Oh yeah, no, that happened to me. This happened to my friend. And they're telling a story that's way bigger than the example I gave of some, like, kids are experiencing this all the time. They're inundated with it. The porn industry is going after our kids at ages, 9, 10, 11, 12. You can't wait till they're in high school to talk about some of these things. I do have the one slight, we tell so many bad stories. One slight encouraging story was somebody who did have a good relationship with her parents. So much so she had met somebody online, didn't tell her parents, ran away from them, not sounding good, ran away, left a note. I'm leaving with this guy. We're going, that night, they had called law enforcement where everybody's trying to find this child. About midnight, she sent a message to her parents, said, I'm scared. Something's bad about to happen. This is where I am. So often, that's not how the story goes.
Right.
The child says, I shouldn't have run away. I'm going to be in trouble if I can call my parents. I'm just going to try to work this out myself.
Right.
And then it's months later. Yep. So just that relationship is so key and crucial.
Well, and I remember as a child, and I'm going to be 66 in a couple of months here, that one thing that my parents instilled in me as a child, that no matter what happened, no matter what was going down, to always, always believe that I could call them and tell them the truth. They wouldn't maybe approve of it, but the consequences were going to be a whole lot less if I was truthful and honest up front, as opposed to, like you say, being afraid. Your child should always feel that they can come to you and tell you the truth, no matter what on that. Well, we have about 14 minutes, Camila, and I know we got to get to some important stuff here.
All right.
What is the Street Grace Justice Project, and why is justice so important for survivors?
Okay, so this is so key, and this is part of the legislation that Faythe really led Georgia to. And it was this, so some studies have shown that up to 90% of survivors have a criminal record from the time they were being trafficked. The majority of those charges were a direct result of their trafficking. And that can keep a survivor from employment, from housing opportunities, from educational opportunities, because so often that same force, fraud, and coercion that the trafficker is using them to sell them, he can also use to say, hey, say those are your drugs. Hey, just take that money and leave. And so after the law was passed, we were able with the Street Grace Justice Project to train groups of attorneys to represent survivors on a pro bono basis from some large law firms, from some individual attorneys. We have over 40 trained now, actively working with survivors to help restore their criminal records, to help. And we've seen many vacatures now. It's been in fact, just about a year, almost a year, we've been able to file these, and really some people who for the first time are able to go apply for a job and not worry what's going to come up on their record. And so it's been just great to see, I think, so many attorneys stepping up, but it's because this wasn't a law that was passed because it was some idea in someone's head. The survivor said, this is what's most important. This prioritize this first.
Well, and
it gives them an opportunity to start over and not worry about it, or not worry about all that has happened, so
Right.
they can make a fresh start.
Right. And it's just what's just. I mean, your victimization should not have been criminalized, but very often you were not in a place to
Right.
talk about what was going on. And again, that same manipulation control, say, hey, just go in, plead guilty. I'll take care of all the payments. Don't worry. You'll be on probation. Not realizing that, this follows you the rest of your life if you cannot get it vacated and get justice restored.
Yeah.
Yep. And Sarah, what I was going to say is that we were a small group of our people were a part of when we went for Advocacy Day for
Yes.
this, and went the year that it was passed in the court systems right there.
Yes.
So in the Capitol.
Yes.
So-
I
Cool.
mean, and this year, yes,
Thank
one
you.
of our big policies, policy priorities again, came out of Survivor Advisory Board. We've employment opportunities. So we're working on legislation that will increase employment opportunities for survivors. I just saw a draft a little while ago, so I'm excited to just get that moving forward. And again, it's going to those who know what is most needed. And then working with some amazing legislators. In this case, we're talking to Representative F. from Gwinnett County, about who's championed and carried many of our bills, just the many trafficking bills, about what's needed and how can we best serve.
Absolutely. Now we have about 8 minutes for the show here. Sarah, do you have another question, please, for Camila?
Yeah. What type of work is being done to prevent human trafficking for youth? And
Yeah.
tell us about Help Locker and that was the Hope.
Youth Leadership Academy. No,
Yeah.
I
I'm
got it
thrilled
mixed
to.
up there. Yeah.
So Help Locker is a broad program, trying to reach, hundreds and thousands of youth, using the artificial intelligence bot, Gracie. She can also respond
Gracie.
to programs.
Yeah.
Actually, part of it is the redeeming technology. Not that we encourage you to have your kids on TikTok, but kids are funneled to the Help Locker, whether it's a physical locker within a school, or wrapped with materials and resources in it. And also helplocker.org is full of questions and answers for some of the main questions that we get asked about trafficking: how to protect yourself, how to say something if you think your friend's being exploited, when not to keep a secret. So it's a huge database and resource of questions, and it's all funneled through our TikTok campaign, through Help Locker TikTok. And while we're just launching, this has been a little bit of a building program. We're getting ready to launch it full force. So we're definitely looking for schools and students that want to help bring this to their schools. And we already have some of our videos have more than 7 million views on why not to take your clothes off, or what to do, what about sexting, why to use TikTok for this. So that's the broader Help Locker program. Then Youth Leadership Academy is, you can tell someone something over and over and over again, but when we really know something is when we're able to teach it back. And we want to raise up youth leaders to stand against trafficking. So it's actually a leadership program based on West Point's leadership program. It's a 10-week program where we're taking smaller groups of students in the schools, whether it's an after-school program, or a lot of schools actually have a midday program, elective type, focusing on leadership, but then they also do a project in their schools or in their community to help educate broadly about trafficking. And I'm really excited, not only the data that's coming out of that as far as kids that are understanding the risks of sexting, the importance of knowing, actually knowing all of your friends, not having friends on social media that you don't have in real life, but also 150% increase in just their idea that they can make a real change in the world on major issues. So it's really exciting. Both of these are actually, they've been tested, they're beta tested, they're locked, ready to go, and we're rolling them out right now in many places. So we're really excited about that.
Well, Camila, I know Sarah and I, with the Women of Community Impact, we want to definitely set up a time that we can get together and talk about this, and Faythe with you,
Yes.
with this youth mentoring, the Youth Leadership Academy, with the summer coming up, how we can collaborate and build some bridges, help bridge the gap with this program in our community in Gwinnett County. My last question that I'd like for you to talk about is legislation session started earlier this month, and what work is being done to combat human trafficking this session, and how can our listeners be involved?
Yes, so thank you. First of all, we mentioned this before, Advocacy Day, we're going to be back live and in person. We're going to be at the church right beside the Capitol. So we just have to walk across the street this time, not walk up 2 blocks. So no, that wasn't that hard, but and then we'll have several legislators there to talk about different trafficking bills and legislation that are happening, that are going on this session. That's going to be on February 16th, and we just opened it up. I think there's still early bird discount, which is just early bird. So we can get your, we're really excited about being back together and really getting some things done. And we'll talk there. We've got some, our policy priorities, from the education to some legislation to protect those who outcry or talk about violence that has happened, keeping them from getting charged with lesser crimes. Just kind of try to protect on the front end so that our trafficking survivors don't have these criminal records even to start with. And if we have to vacate them, we'll do that. So there's a lot of other things and trainings, training type legislation. So really excited. I know we only have another second or two. Join us so we can help advocate for continued real change through the legislation.
So Camila, would you give the website for Street Grace and email, just any information that our listeners can write down right now to reach out to you to be involved?
Yep. So it's streetgrace.org. Street Grace is what we are on Facebook and everywhere else. If you go to streetgrace.org/events, or just click on events while you get there, you'll see the links to register for Advocacy Day. And we'll have more trainings up there. I think I just finished one this morning. So we'll get some more trainings up there as well. And then we also have, my email is just Camila, CAMILA @streetgrace.org, but info@streetgrace.org is also manned, and we can get, whether it's setting up a training or just getting more involved, because with the launch of this Youth Leadership Academy, we need facilitators to help us. We can't be in all the schools if we're going to reach as broad as we want to reach. So really definitely looking for people to help us in the schools with the kids with this program.
Absolutely. And I know that I've attended some in-person training at Street Grace corporate office. And I know that you do some online Zoom and things of this nature. So, our audience, again, at streetgrace.org. Is that right?
Yes.
And Faythe, I would love for you to, we've got about 2 minutes or 1 minute. Just give us a 15-second closing comments from you, if you would, please. And we can't thank you enough for being on the show tonight.
Well, I thank you for letting me be on the show. And I just want to say, really just, get involved, especially get involved with youth today, whatever they need mentoring or helping, and just reach out to us. The mentor program is open, and just, attend our trainings and just, learn all you can so that you can help the next survivor or the next youth not to become a survivor.
Absolutely.
I like that. To make
Sarah,
the next youth not to become a survivor. I love that.
Love that.
Absolutely. We've got about 30 seconds. Sarah, do you have a closing comment that you would like to make? Something, what did you learn today?
That last comment.
All right.
That's my aha moment. That's everything right there.
Absolutely. Well, Camila and Faythe, we can't thank you both enough for joining us and educating our audience and our listeners about street grace and all the amazing things you're doing here in Atlanta, in Houston, Texas, and in Chattanooga. And we look forward to seeing you at Advocacy Day, February 16th. And I think, is that from 9 to 11, Camila? Is that right? 9 to 11?
9 to 11, yes.
11 at the church. And we'll have the information on Women of Community Impact's Facebook page. And our website's going to be live pretty soon. And we'll have all this information on our website. Again, thank you, WCEG Network, Penny Rogers and its board for the opportunity for us to bring amazing people like Camila and Faythe with Street Grace to you. And Sarah, my heart out to you. And I know you're hunkered down with the taxes season right now. So we love you. Thank you, ladies. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.